Yes, it is.
Et ça durera toute notre vie. N'aimer qu'une fois, c'est encore possible aujourd'hui. Oui, oui, oui.
Well, it's an all-volunteer children's charity. And my family, I wanted to raise my two young boys in a developing country. So we lived, my husband was a Navy Top Gun pilot, and we lived in the Philippines for 6 years. And we traveled all over the country, and we met children who are exactly like American children. You know, they argue with their brothers and sisters, they love ice cream, they love to play at the beach, and the only thing that was different is when they would go to school. And there would be no books, no toys, no games, very few crayons. So over the years, we developed this organization called Books for the Barrios. And last year, we gave the 16 millionth book to the Philippine president. And these were all donated and packed by American school children. And sometimes we get books from publishers. And we send them to very remote areas, mainly in war-torn areas of the Philippines, because we really want to help young Muslim girls. That is the only way to peace. Peace is a process, and it must be recognized that if we educate young girls, especially young Muslim girls, eventually there will be peace in the world. So it's been a providential calling for the last 36 years. We started in 1981, and we work very hard every day to do this. Well, we've reached almost about, I'd say 100,000 American children to learn to think globally, but act right within their own houses, their own schools, because what we send the children, if they've either finished with the games and they've read the books, and then we send them over to children who would have never had the opportunity to have access to all of this. And now we're going into our third generation, and the children that have started out in our schools are, parents, and they're professionals now, and they credit our program for them having a decent quality education. So it's a win-win between the people who are giving it and the people who are receiving. Not even thinking about, how many tons that we have diverted from the local landfill, because many school districts all over, if they can't find an organization like this, they would just dump them in the local landfill. So it's an environmental project. It's a women's project. We want to empower young girls like you to think globally and act right within your own area. No, we never did. We weren't exposed to it, and that's the reason that I wanted them to live, in a developing country, so they could see how fortunate they are. So we didn't have a business plan, we didn't have an exit plan, and we just did it because we were led to do this by our higher spirit. Well, initially we started with the schools, with my children's schools in the local area, and then we would send out newsletters, and then eventually the internet came in, and it's mainly social media now that does it. We would write articles for the local newspaper. We would have field trips of children coming into our facility to pack the books, and word of mouth, talking to different service organizations like the Teachers Association or the Rotary Club or Filipino organizations. And we worked on this every day, even though my husband was flying once he got out of the Navy for American Airlines, and he would go all over the Bay Area to pick up the books. And it was a very intense, very labor-intensive also. And fundraising is the hardest part. Filipinos love what we do, and they appreciate what we do. But because they come from a country where there is so much graft and corruption, and they really can't understand why white American family would do this, they're hesitant to donate. So we can't rely on the Filipino Americans to help us. So we write grants. Sometimes we get, money from local organizations and corporations. And then every once in a while we meet the most wonderful Filipino Americans. I never had any self-doubt about what life was. I was raising my two boys, and we were traveling, and but it really became apparent that when we were actually living in the country that this is something that I could do, because I was teaching over there, and the things that I would normally throw away, we would just put in a box, and as we traveled, we would send it to us. It would go with us. And it's just really amazing what a broken crayon is, how important it is to children who've never seen any crayons. We went to a beautiful island. It's pretty much ruined now, called Boracay in the early 80s. And I always would travel with some books. And I was sitting there at the beach, and this little boy came around, and I said, "Oh, you want to look at this book?" And it was a Mickey Mouse book. And he was looking at the pages, and it was upside down, and he just kept saying, "Wow, wow." And then I turned the book properly, and my boys were off swimming and all. And it was the first color picture book that he'd ever seen. And now he is grown, and he's a businessman now, and he's got children. And all through his school, he was so thankful that he was able to have some books to read, thanks to our project. Well, it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. We started out with small boxes, and then before we shut down the warehouse 2 years ago, we had sent 360 40-foot containers, all books and school supplies and educational materials. So it's gotten huge. Well, I just always wanted to be a good role model for my children. And now my grandchildren are growing up, learning how to give. My little granddaughter at 8 years old just got a certificate at her school because she shows so much gratitude and compassion. And we just wanted to pass that down because we think that's a very important part of character building. We do send books when we get requests and we get funding. We've sent some to Honduras, to Mexico, to Tibet, and to Uganda. And now we just collect. People still call us every day, and but we can no longer afford the funding to send these things over there. What we're doing now is we develop training for the teachers that are in our so-called model of excellence schools. We have 76 of them over there, and we provide the training so these teachers can train in the fun learning, critical thinking way of teaching. Well, you would just have to find, an area that you might be interested in, whether it's education or the health field or whatever, and just continue to travel. And when you travel, you get off the beaten path. When I would always travel with books and pencils, paperback books and pencils, and give them out as opposed to candy. We just worked really hard as a team. It's my husband and I, and we used a lot of our own money, and we were very successful because we never let any obstacles come in our way, because we knew how important our work was. It's really, it's a question that can't really be answered until you find it. I mean, you might be walking down a street in San Francisco and seeing a homeless person. Then you go, oh my goodness, look at this. Look at how people live. And then you might research and find out about how you can be an advocate for a homeless person. Or you could volunteer in, shelters, or volunteer in schools, the Title I schools where young children need to be read to. It's what your life experiences give you. We happen to live in a very poor country, and we were just led to that.